The morning sun rose over Kepler 442b, casting long shadows across the mining colony that humans and Vorthak had built together. The settlement sprawled across a wide valley, with gleaming metal buildings and deep mining shafts that went far into the planet's surface. Smoke rose from the processing plants where valuable minerals were turned into materials that both species needed. Hyunwoo pressed his small face against the window of his family's home. The 7-year-old boy watched the big lizard-like Vorthak workers moving heavy equipment with their strong arms. Their scales caught the sunlight, making them look like walking emeralds. He was not scared of them like some of the other human children. To him, they were just different neighbors who happened to be really tall and have sharp teeth. His mother, Sora, came up behind him and put her hand on his shoulder. She was the head of mining operations for the human side of the colony. Her work clothes were already dirty from checking the morning reports. "What are you looking at, little one?" she asked. "The Vorthak are bringing something big today," Hyunwoo said. "Look at all those trucks." Sora looked out the window and saw what her son meant. A long line of massive vehicles was coming toward the colony. These were not the usual supply trucks. These were military transports painted in the dark green colors of the Vorthak Empire. Armed guards rode on top of each vehicle. "I wonder what that is about," Sora said, but she had a feeling she would find out soon. Hyunwoo's father, Taemin, came into the room. He was the colony administrator, which meant he had to deal with both human and Vorthak problems. His face looked worried as he checked his communication device. "The Vorthak are doing some kind of demonstration today," he said. "Commander Vextha wants all the department heads to attend. They say it is important for future colony defense." Sora frowned. "What kind of demonstration?" They did not say, but they brought a lot of security with them. The family finished their breakfast quickly. Taemin and Sora had to get to the demonstration area, which was a large open space near the edge of the colony. Hyunwoo wanted to come with them, but his parents said no. The boy would stay with Jin-ae, the human scientist who studied alien animals. She was like an aunt to him. Jin-ae arrived at their home just as Taemin and Sora were leaving. She was a thin woman with kind eyes who always had interesting stories about the creatures she worked with. Today, though, she seemed nervous. "Do you know what the Vorthak brought?" Sora asked her. "I heard rumors," Jin-ae said quietly. "They say it is something called a Gorthak. I have read about them in the old files. They are very dangerous." Taemin and Sora looked at each other with concern, but they had to go. The Vorthak did not like to be kept waiting. As they walked toward the demonstration area, they could see that hundreds of people had gathered. Not just humans and Vorthak from the colony, but alien visitors from other worlds. Some looked like insects with multiple arms. Others were tall and thin with blue skin. A few were covered in fur and had large eyes. Commander Vexitha stood on a raised platform in the center of the area. He was bigger than most Vorthak, with darker scales and scars from many battles. His voice was deep and strong when he spoke. "Friends and potential allies," he said. "Today you will see why the Vorthak Empire has protected this sector of space. For 3,000 years, you will see our ultimate weapon." Behind him, the large military trucks were arranged in a circle. Vorthak soldiers with heavy weapons stood guard around them. In the center of the circle was a massive metal container. It was as big as a building and had thick walls with warning symbols painted all over it. "The Gorthak Prime," Commander Vextha continued, "is the perfect combination of natural strength and advanced technology. No force in the galaxy has ever defeated one without destroying it completely. It is faster than a starship, stronger than a battle tank, and smarter than most soldiers." The crowd began to murmur with excitement and fear. Some of the alien visitors moved closer to get a better look. Others stepped back. Wu Jin, the colony's human security chief, stood near Taemin and Sora. His hand rested on his weapon, though he knew it would be useless against whatever was in that container. "I do not like this," he whispered. "Why would they bring such a thing here?" "To show it off," Taemin replied. "The Vorthak are trying to sell these creatures to other species." On the platform, Commander Vextha pressed a control button. The metal container began to open with a loud hissing sound. Steam poured out from the gaps as the walls slowly lowered. What emerged from the container made everyone gasp. The Gorthak Prime was enormous. It stood 30 feet tall on thick legs that ended in claws as long as swords. Its body was covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. Parts of its head and arms had been replaced with mechanical components that glowed with red lights. Cables and wires ran under its skin, connecting the organic parts to the artificial ones. Its face was the most frightening thing of all. One eye was natural, yellow, and filled with rage. The other eye was a mechanical device that scanned back and forth like a weapon targeting system. Its mouth was full of teeth that could bite through steel. The creature stood perfectly still, like a statue of death. The only sounds were the humming of its mechanical parts and the heavy breathing that came from its massive chest. The Gorthak Prime responds only to direct neural commands, Commander Vextha explained. It cannot be reasoned with or bargained with. It knows only how to hunt and destroy enemies. Watch. He gave another command, and several targets rose from the ground around the demonstration area. Some were made of metal, others of concrete. A few were even armored vehicles. The Gorthak Prime moved with terrible speed. Despite its size, it was faster than anything that big should be. Its claws tore through metal like paper. Its teeth crushed concrete blocks. When it hit the armored vehicles, they exploded into pieces. The crowd watched in amazed terror. This creature could destroy an entire army by itself. But then something went wrong. The sky above the colony had been growing darker during the demonstration. Storm clouds were gathering, and the air felt electric. Suddenly, lightning flashed across the sky. It was not normal lightning. This was a solar storm, the kind that happened sometimes on Kepler 442b when the planet's magnetic field was disturbed. The electromagnetic pulse from the lightning hit the colony's electronics. Most systems had protection against such storms. But the Gorthak Prime's control implants were not designed for this planet's unusual electrical activity. Sparks flew from the mechanical parts of the creature's head. Its red targeting eye flickered and went dark. The neural control link that kept it obedient was severed. For a moment, nothing happened. The Gorthak Prime stood motionless among the destroyed targets. Then it raised its head and roared. The sound was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It was part animal scream, part mechanical alarm, and part something else entirely. Something that spoke of pain and rage that had been building for thousands of years. Commander Vextha realized immediately what had happened. He shouted orders to his soldiers, but it was too late. The Gorthak Prime turned toward the crowd of spectators. Its one natural eye burned with hatred. Without the control implants, all of its suppressed fury was free. It charged. Vorthak soldiers opened fire with their energy weapons, but the beams bounced harmlessly off the creature's armor. Human security forces tried their projectile weapons with the same result. The Gorthak Prime had been designed to be unstoppable, and now it was, proving that design worked too well. The creature reached the edge of the crowd and began its rampage. Its claws swept through groups of fleeing aliens. Its massive feet crushed anything in its path. Vehicles were thrown like toys when it passed. Captain Zethmore, Commander Vextha's second-in-command, led a group of elite Vorthak warriors in a desperate attack. These were soldiers who had fought in hundreds of battles across the galaxy. They used advanced weapons and perfect tactics. It did not matter. The Gorthak Prime tore through them like they were children playing at war. Panic spread through the colony. Alarms sounded from every building. People ran in all directions, trying to find shelter or escape routes. But there was nowhere to go that the creature could not follow. Taemin grabbed Sora's hand and they ran toward their home. They had to get to Hyunwoo and Jin'e. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of destruction growing closer. "The deep mining tunnels," Sora shouted, over the noise. "We can hide there." "Will that work?" Taemin asked. "It has to," she replied. But even as they ran, they could see that the Gorthak Prime was not just destroying things randomly. Its mechanical eye was flickering back to life, and it was tracking individual people. The creature had enhanced senses that could follow any trail. There would be no hiding from this monster. Back at their home, Ginny heard the alarms and looked out the window. She saw the chaos and the massive creature in the distance. Her scientific mind immediately began analyzing what she was seeing. "Hyunwoo," she called. "We need to leave. Right now." The boy came running. He had heard the terrible roar and the sounds of fighting. His young face was scared but determined. "Where are my parents?" he asked. "They are coming," Ginny said, though she was not sure if that was true. "We need to get to the emergency shelter." They left the house and joined the stream of people fleeing toward the underground. The underground tunnels of the mining colony were never meant to hold so many people. Hundreds of humans, Vorthak, and alien visitors crowded into the narrow passages that normally only saw work crews and mining equipment. The air was thick and hot from so many bodies pressed together. Ginny held Hyunwoo's hand tightly as they moved deeper into the tunnel system. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the rocky walls. The boy had not said much since they started running, but his eyes were alert and watching everything. "Will we be safe down here?" he asked quietly. Ginny wanted to tell him yes, but she was a scientist. She did not lie about facts, even to children. "I hope so," she said. "These tunnels go very deep. Maybe the creature will not follow us." But even as she spoke, she knew it was probably not true. The Gorthak Prime had been designed as the perfect hunter. It would not give up easily. Above them, the sounds of destruction continued. They could hear metal being torn and buildings collapsing. Sometimes the tunnel walls shook when something very heavy hit the ground. Taemin and Sora finally caught up with them near one of the main junction points. Sora grabbed Hyunwoo and held him tight, while Taemin tried to get information from the other colony leaders who had made it to the tunnels. "What is the situation up there?" Woojin asked. The security chief looked like he had been through a battle. His uniform was torn and he had cuts on his face. "Bad," Taemin replied. "The creature destroyed most of the central district. Commander Vexitha is trying to coordinate some kind of counterattack, but their weapons are not working." "How is that possible?" asked Dr. Young-soo, a human linguist who had been studying Vorthak culture. "They created this thing. They must know how to stop it." "That is the problem," Sora said. "They created it too well. The Gorthak Prime was designed to be unstoppable. Even the Vorthak do not have weapons that can penetrate its armor." Jin-A had been thinking about this problem since the creature first broke free. As a xenobiologist, she had studied many different types of alien life forms. The Gorthak was unlike anything she had seen before. "I need to get to my laboratory," she said. "I have files about these creatures that might help." "Your laboratory is in the science building," Woojin pointed out. "That building is right in the path of destruction. Then we need to find another way to get information." Commander Vextha's voice suddenly echoed through the tunnel's communication system. The Vorthak leader sounded tired and desperate. "Attention all colony residents," he said. "We are implementing Protocol 7. All non-military personnel must remain in the deep shelters until further notice. Do not attempt to return to the surface." "Protocol 7? Young-soo asked. "What is that?" Woojin's face went pale. "That is the protocol for when conventional weapons have failed completely. It means they are going to try to destroy the creature with heavy explosives, even if it damages the colony." The people in the tunnel looked at each other with fear. If the Vorthak were willing to damage their own demonstration to stop the Gorthak Prime, then the situation was truly desperate. On the surface, Captain Zethmore was leading what remained of the Vorthak military forces in a fighting retreat. Half of his soldiers were already dead or wounded. The others were low on ammunition and running out of places to take cover. The Gorthak Prime had learned from each attack. Its bioarmor was adapting to their energy weapons, becoming more resistant with each shot. Its mechanical components were analyzing their tactics and finding ways to counter them. "Captain," one of his soldiers called out, "the heavy plasma cannons are in position." Zethmore looked at the weapons his troops had set up. These were the most powerful portable weapons in the Vorthak arsenal. They could punch through starship armor. If anything could stop the creature, it would be these guns. "All units fire on my command," he ordered. The plasma cannons charged up with a high-pitched whine, Energy readings spiked as the weapons prepared to unleash their full power. Fire! Brilliant beams of superheated plasma struck the Gorthak Prime from multiple directions. The energy was so intense that it melted the metal debris around the creature and turned sand into glass. For a moment, Zethmore thought they had succeeded. The creature was hidden in a cloud of steam and smoke from the impact. Then the Gorthak Prime walked out of the cloud, completely unharmed. Its bio-armor had not just resisted the plasma, it had absorbed the energy and used it to make itself stronger. The mechanical components glowed brighter, and the creature moved even faster than before. Impossible, Zethmore whispered. The Gorthak Prime looked directly at him with its one natural eye. There was intelligence there, but it was an intelligence filled with rage and pain. Then it charged, and Zethmore's remaining soldiers scattered, like leaves in a hurricane. Down in the tunnels, the people could feel the vibrations from the plasma cannon attack. For a brief moment, everyone was quiet, hoping that the Vorthak had found a way to stop their runaway weapon. Then they heard the roaring start again, louder and closer than before. "It is heading toward the main entrance to the mining complex," Taman said, checking the colony's sensor readings on his portable device. "If it gets into the tunnel system..." He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. The tunnels that were supposed to protect them would become a trap. Jin A stood up suddenly. "I need to see the creature," she said. "Are you crazy?" Sora asked. "You will be killed instantly." "No, listen to me. I have been thinking about what I read in the old files. The Gorthak are not just weapons, they used to be living creatures, from different species. The Vorthak captured them and used bioengineering to turn them into these monsters." "What does that matter now?" Wu Jin asked. "It matters because somewhere under all that armor and machinery, there might still be a living mind. A consciousness that remembers what it was like before the transformation." Youngsu looked interested despite the danger. "You think the original personality is still there?" "I think the control implants were not just keeping it obedient. They were suppressing its original memories and instincts. When the solar storm damaged the implants, it did not just free the creature's aggression. It might have freed other parts of its mind, too." Commander Vextha's voice came through the communication system again. This time, he sounded even more desperate. "All units, prepare for emergency evacuation procedures. We are going to seal the mining tunnels and try to contain the creature underground." The people in the tunnels realized what this meant. The Vorthak were going to trap the Gorthak Prime in the tunnels with them, hoping that the confined space would somehow make it easier to defeat. "They are using us as bait," someone said angrily. "No," Taman replied. "They are out of options. This is the only chance they have left." Heavy machinery started moving on the surface. The Vorthak were bringing in equipment to seal the tunnel entrances. Once that was done, everyone underground would be trapped with the creature until one side or the other was completely destroyed. Hyunwoo had been listening to all of this without saying anything, but now he tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom," he said quietly, "the creature is not really bad, is it?" Sora looked down at her son with surprise. "What do you mean, little one?" "Ginny said it used to be a different kind of animal before the Vorthak changed it, so it is not evil. It is just hurt and scared." The adults looked at the boy with amazement. Even in the middle of all this danger, he was thinking about the creature's feelings rather than just his own safety. "That is very wise," Jinne said softly. "But even if you are right, the creature is still very dangerous. Being hurt and scared can make someone do terrible things. But if we could help it remember who it used to be," Hyunwoo continued, "maybe it would stop being angry." Before anyone could respond to this, the tunnel walls began to shake violently. Dust fell from the ceiling, and several of the emergency lights went out. The Gorthak Prime had found the main entrance to the mining complex. They could hear it moving through the upper levels of the tunnel system, its massive claws scraping against stone and metal. It was searching for them, following their scents and the heat signatures from their bodies. "How long until the Vorthak seal the entrances?" Sora asked. Taman checked his device. 20 minutes, maybe less." "And how long until that thing finds us?" No one wanted to answer that question, but they all knew the truth. The Gorthak Prime would reach them long before the tunnels were sealed. In the darkness of the deep mining shafts, hundreds of people from different worlds waited for death to find them. They had energy weapons, explosives, and the combined knowledge of multiple advanced civilizations. None of it seemed to matter against the perfect killing machine that was hunting them through the tunnels. But in that same darkness, a 7-year-old human boy was thinking thoughts that none of the adults had considered. Thoughts about pain and fear and what it meant to be lost and alone. Thoughts that would soon change everything. The sound of the Gorthak Prime moving through the upper tunnels was like thunder that never stopped. Metal scraped against stone as its massive claws carved new paths through the mining complex. Every few minutes they would hear a section of tunnel collapse as the creature's weight became too much for the old support beams. In the deepest part of the shelter, the refugees had organized themselves as best they could. The Vorthak soldiers formed a defensive line near the main passage, even though everyone knew their weapons would be useless. The human security forces took positions behind them. The civilians, including the families with children, stayed in the back near the emergency supplies. Hyunwoo sat with his parents and Jinhae in a small alcove carved into the tunnel wall. The boy had found some old mining equipment to play with, but he was not really playing. He was thinking and watching the Seo. Creature is getting closer, Woojin reported. He had been monitoring the motion sensors that were still working in the upper tunnels. It will reach this level in less than 10 minutes. Commander Vextha's voice came through the communication system one more time. The Vorthak leader sounded defeated. To all personnel in the mining complex, he said. The tunnel sealing operation has been delayed due to equipment problems. We are still working on a solution. Everyone in the shelter knew what that really meant. The Vorthak had run out of ideas. They were hoping for a miracle that was not going to come. Sora held her son closer and tried not to let him see how frightened she was. Taemin checked his weapon even though he knew it would not help. Jinhae stared at the tunnel ceiling, still, trying to think of some scientific solution to their problem, but Hyunwoo was watching something different. Near the entrance to their alcove, there was a small furry creature that had wandered down from the surface. It was one of the domestic animals that the colonists kept as pets. The little animal was scared and lost just like everyone else. Look, Hyunwoo whispered to Jinhae. Even the little animals came down here to hide. Jinhae glanced at the creature and nodded absently. Then she looked again, more carefully. That is strange, she said. How did it get past the Gorthak Prime? The creature should have killed it immediately. Maybe it is too small to notice, Sora suggested. No, that does not make sense. The Gorthak has enhanced senses. It can detect anything that moves. Hyunwoo stood up and walked slowly toward the small animal. It was shaking with fear, but it did not run away from him. He knelt down and gently picked it up. It is not hurt, he said. Just scared. Jinhae felt a sudden excitement as an idea began to form in her mind. Hyunwoo, you said the creature is not really evil, just hurt and scared. What made you think that? The boy considered the question seriously. When I was watching from our window, this morning I saw how the Vorthak soldiers acted around it. They were afraid of it, but they were also sad, like when you have to put down a sick animal that used to be your friend. And you think the creature remembers being something else? Maybe. When I get really angry or scared, sometimes I forget things, but I always remember my family. I always remember who loves me. The words hit Jinhae like a lightning bolt. She grabbed her portable computer and started pulling up files that she had downloaded earlier. What are you doing? Taemin asked. Research, Jinhae said quickly. Hyunwoo just gave me an idea. I need to check something about Gorthak biology. She found the file she was looking for and began reading rapidly. The information was incomplete because the Vorthak kept most details about their bioweapons secret, but there were enough clues to build a theory. Listen to this, she said. The original creatures used for the Gorthak program came from dozens of different species. But they all had one thing in common. They were all social animals with strong family bonds. Why would that matter? Sora asked. Because those kinds of bonds are not just emotional, they are biological. They create specific neural pathways in the brain that are very hard to destroy completely. The Vorthak bioengineers could suppress them, but probably not eliminate them entirely. Young-Soo leaned closer to listen. As a linguist, he understood how communication and relationships affected brain development. You are saying the creature might still have some memory of caring for others, he asked. More than that, I think the control implants were specifically designed to block those memories because they would interfere with the creature's effectiveness as a weapon. A Gorthak that remembered having children would hesitate before killing other people's children. The tunnel shook again, more violently this time. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling. The creature was only 2 levels above them now. Even if you are right, Woojin said, how does that help us? We cannot exactly have a conversation with something that is trying to kill us. Hyunwoo looked up from the small animal he was holding. But we can try to remind it, he said simply. The Yao adult stared at the boy. His suggestion was so dangerous that it was almost unthinkable, but it was also the only idea they had. Absolutely not, Sora said firmly. I will not let my son anywhere near that monster. Mom, Hyunwoo said patiently. Someone has to try. And it should be someone who is not scary. A child would be the least threatening approach, Jin'e admitted reluctantly. The creature's original protective instincts would be most likely to respond to a young, helpless target. No, Taemin said. We are not using our son as bait. Not as bait, Hyunwoo corrected. As a friend. Before his parents could stop him, the boy stood up and started walking toward the main tunnel. He moved quietly and calmly, still carrying the small furry animal. Hyunwoo, come back here right now, Sora called. But she kept her voice low, because she did not want to attract the creature's attention. The boy stopped and looked back at his family. I am not running away, he said. I am going to help. The sound of the Gorthak Prime grew louder. It had reached the level just above them and was searching for a way down. They could hear its heavy breathing and the whir of its mechanical components. If I'm wrong, Ginny said quietly, this will be over very quickly. And if you are right, Taemin asked, then we might learn something amazing about consciousness and memory and what it means to be alive. The other people in the shelter had noticed what was happening. Some of them moved to stop the boy, but Woojin held up his hand. Let him try, the security chief said. We are all going to die anyway if this does not work. Hyunwoo reached the main tunnel just as a section of the ceiling collapsed 20 meters ahead of him. Rock and metal crashed down, and through the hole dropped the massive form of the Gorthak Prime. The creature landed heavily, its claws digging into the tunnel floor for stability. It was even more terrifying up close than it had been during the demonstration. Its bioarmor was scarred from the battle above, and some of its mechanical components were sparking from damage. But it was the creature's eyes that were most frightening. The mechanical eye scanned back and forth like a targeting system, while the natural eye burned with rage and pain that had built up over thousands of years. The Gorthak Prime turned toward the shelter area and took a step forward. Then it stopped. It had detected the small boy standing in the tunnel ahead of it. For a moment, nothing happened. The creature and the child looked at each other across the empty space. Hyunwoo was small and defenseless, holding a tiny animal that was also scared and helpless. The Gorthak Prime raised one massive clawed hand. Its mechanical components hummed as they prepared to strike. And then something strange happened. The creature's mechanical eye flickered. Just for a second, the red targeting light went out and came back on. During that brief moment, the natural eye seemed to look at Hyunwoo differently, not as a target to be destroyed, but as something else. Something that triggered memories buried, so deep that even bioengineering could not completely erase them. Hyunwoo saw the flicker too, and in that moment he understood what Jin'e had been trying to explain. The creature was not just a weapon, it was a living being that had once cared for others the way his own parents cared for him. The boy took a small step forward. It is okay, he said softly, his voice echoing in the tunnel. I know you are hurt. I know you are scared. But you do not have to be angry anymore. The Gorthak Prime tilted its massive head slightly, as if it was trying to understand what the Child was saying. Behind Hyunwoo, his parents and the other adults watched in terror and amazement. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy was actually listening to a 7-year-old boy. But the moment was fragile. The creature's control implants were damaged, not destroyed. The artificial conditioning that made it a perfect killer was still there, fighting against the buried memories that Hyunwoo was trying to awaken. The boy took another step closer. The Gorthak Prime raised its clawed hand higher, and then Hyunwoo spoke the word that would change everything. The word came from Hyunwoo's lips like a whisper, but it echoed through the tunnel with the power of thunder. Appa. The simple Korean word for father hung in the air between the small boy and the massive creature that towered over him. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. The Gorthak Prime stood frozen with its clawed hand raised to strike. Then something impossible occurred. The creature's mechanical eye went completely dark. Its targeting systems shut down with a soft electronic whine. The red lights that had glowed menacingly from its cybernetic components flickered and went out one by one. But it was the natural eye that showed the real change. The burning rage that had filled it began to dim, replaced by something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. The Gorthak Prime lowered its massive arms slowly. Its breathing changed from the harsh mechanical rhythm it had maintained. Since breaking free to something deeper and more natural, steam rose from vents in its bio-armor as internal systems began shutting down. And then, to the amazement of everyone watching, the creature began to cry. Actual tears flowed from its natural eye, running down the scarred surface of its face and dripping onto the tunnel floor. The sound it made was no longer the terrifying roar of a perfect weapon. It was something much more heartbreaking. It was the sound of someone who had been lost for a very long time and was just beginning to remember who they used to be. Jin'e stared in wonder as her theories proved true before her eyes. The word triggered something, she whispered. A memory so basic that even the bioengineering could not completely erase it. Behind her, Sora and Taemin held each other tightly, torn between pride in their son's courage and terror at how close he was to the creature. Youngsu was frantically taking notes on his portable device. "This is unprecedented," he said. The boy used a word that represents the most fundamental relationship in social species, parent and child. Even across different biology, that bond translates. Commander Vextha's voice suddenly came through the communication system, but now it sounded confused rather than desperate. "All units stand down. Repeat, stand down. The creature has stopped moving. We are not sure what is happening." In the tunnel, Hyunwoo took another small step toward the Gorthak Prime. The creature was still crying, and its massive form was shaking slightly. The boy could see that underneath all the armor and machinery, there was something that was just as scared and lost as he had been when the attack started. "It is okay," he said gently. "You remember now, do you not? You had children once. You loved them like my Appa loves me." The creature made a soft sound that might have been a whimper. Its natural eye focused on the boy with growing clarity, as if it was seeing him for the first time as a person rather than a target. Slowly, carefully, the Gorthak Prime knelt down in the tunnel. Even kneeling, it was still much taller than Hyunwoo, but the gesture made it seem less threatening. More like someone asking for help than someone planning to cause harm. The boy reached out with one small hand and touched the creature's face, just below its natural eye where the tears were still flowing. "You miss them," he said softly. "Your children. They are gone, and you have been angry for so long that you forgot how to be sad instead." The Gorthak Prime closed its natural eye and leaned into the child's touch. For 3,000 years it had known nothing but rage and violence, and the artificial programming that made it a perfect killer. But now, with one word from a human child, the memories that had been buried came flooding back. It remembered a different world, with 2 suns and purple grass. It remembered smaller versions of itself playing in that grass while it watched protectively from nearby. It remembered the sound of their voices calling to it in a language that had been dead for millennia. It remembered being a parent. The other people in the shelter began to move closer, drawn by the incredible scene playing out before them. Forthak soldiers who had fought this creature just hours ago now stared in amazement at its transformation. Captain Zethmore appeared at the entrance to the tunnel, his weapons lowered. He had been tracking the creature through the upper levels, when it suddenly stopped moving. Now he could see why. Impossible, he breathed. No Gorthak has ever shown emotional response to anything other than combat stimuli. Because you never gave them the chance, Jinne said, stepping forward carefully. You suppressed their memories, but you could not destroy them completely. The neural pathways for parental love are too fundamental to biological consciousness. Hyunwoo looked up at the massive creature's face. What was your name? He asked. Before they changed you, what did your children call you? The Gorthak Prime opened its mouth and tried to speak. At first, only mechanical sounds came out, distorted by the cybernetic implants in its throat. But then, slowly, it managed to form words in a language no one had heard for thousands of years. The words were soft and musical, completely unlike the harsh roars it had made as a weapon. Young-Soo quickly activated his translation software, though the language was so ancient that the computer could only provide rough approximations. Father, protector, the one who brings food and safety. The computer translated. The name seems to translate as something like gentle strong one or tender guardian. Tears began flowing from the eyes of many of the people watching. Even some of the Vorthak soldiers seemed moved by what they were seeing. But Commander Vextha was not ready to accept what was happening. His voice came through the communication system again, sharp with authority. All units, maintain your positions. This could be some kind of trick or malfunction. Do not approach the creature. Captain Zethmore touched his communication device. Commander, he said quietly, I do not think this is a trick. The creature is different now. The aggression patterns are completely gone. Impossible. Gorthak Prime units cannot be reasoned with or controlled through anything except direct neural interface. Then explain what we are seeing. There was silence on the communication channel as Commander Vextha tried to process what his subordinate was telling him. In the tunnel, Hyunwoo was still talking quietly to the creature. You do not have to hurt anyone anymore, he said. The people who made you into a weapon, they did not understand. They thought making you angry would make you strong. But real strength comes from protecting people, not destroying them. The Gorthak Prime nodded slowly, as if it was remembering this truth from its distant past. It looked around the tunnel, at all the people who had been hiding from it, and its expression changed to something that might have been shame. It spoke again in its ancient language, and the computer provided another translation. Sorry, did not mean, was lost, could not remember. Sora finally could not wait any longer. Despite the danger, she walked forward and knelt beside her son. The creature could have killed her easily, but instead it pulled back slightly, to give her more room. Thank you, she said to the Gorthak Prime. Thank you for not hurting my child. The creature looked at her with its natural eye and spoke one more word that needed no translation. Mother. It understood. The bond between parent and child was universal, crossing not just species lines, but even the barriers created by advanced bioengineering. In recognizing Hyunwoo as someone's precious child, it had remembered what it meant to be someone's devoted parent. Taimin joined his family, followed by Jinne and the others. Soon the tunnel was filled with people of different species, all looking at the massive creature that had been transformed by a single word from a human child. The Gorthak Prime reached out with one massive hand and gently touched Hyunwoo's head. Its claws, which had torn through metal and stone, barely disturbed the boy's hair. Appa, it said carefully, trying out the human word that had unlocked its memories. Hyunwoo smiled. That is right. And now you can remember how to be an Appa, again, instead of just a weapon. High above them, Commander Vextha was struggling to understand reports from his soldiers that made no sense according to everything he knew about Gorthak biology and behavior. But in the deep tunnels of the mining colony, a miracle was taking place. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy had been defeated not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by a 7-year-old boy who understood that even monsters could remember how to love. The word Appa had done what 3,000 years of the Vorthak military could not accomplish. It had brought peace to a creature that had known only war, and in doing so, It had changed everything about how the galaxy would view both humans and the nature of consciousness itself. 3 months after the incident on Kepler 442b, the mining colony had become the most famous place in the galaxy. Ships arrived every day carrying diplomats, scientists, journalists, and curious visitors from hundreds of different worlds. They all came to see the same thing: the Gorthak Prime that had chosen to protect instead of destroy. The creature that everyone now knew as Gentle Strong One stood guard at the main entrance to the colony. It was still massive and intimidating, but children no longer ran from it in fear. Instead, they brought it small gifts and drawings, which it accepted with careful gentleness. Hyunwoo visited his friend every morning before school. The boy had grown famous throughout the galaxy as the child who spoke to monsters, but he still preferred playing with ordinary toys and reading books about space exploration. "Good morning," he said as he approached the Gorthak Prime's position near the colony gates. "Good morning, little Appa," the creature replied in its careful pronunciation of human words. Youngsu had been working with it for months to learn basic galactic standard, though it still preferred to speak in its own ancient language when possible. "Any visitors today?" Hyunwoo asked. "Many. The blue-skinned ones from the Centauri Federation want to study my bio-armor. The insect people from Rigel want to understand my memory restoration. And there is a new delegation from Earth." Hyunwoo's eyes lit up. Earth was the human homeworld, though he had never been there. "What do they want?" "They want to learn how humans can communicate with other species so well. They say your people have a gift for understanding consciousness that other species do not." This was true, though it had taken the galaxy a long time to recognize it. For years, humans had been seen as a weak species. They were not as strong as the Vorthak, not as intelligent as the Centaurians, and not as technologically advanced as dozens of other civilizations. But the incident with the Gorthak Prime had revealed something that all those other species had missed. Humans had an almost supernatural ability to recognize and connect with consciousness in all its forms. They could see the person inside the monster, the intelligence behind the alien appearance, the common emotions that existed across all thinking beings. Commander Vextha approached from the colony administration building. The Vorthak leader looked different than he had 3 months ago. His scales seemed less bright and he moved with less confidence. The failure of his ultimate weapon had shaken his faith in everything the Vorthak Empire stood for. "Good morning, Hyunwoo," he said politely. The boy had become something of a hero to even the Vorthak, though they were still struggling to understand what his success meant for their culture. "Good morning, Commander. Are you here to see Gentle Strong One?" "Yes, we have received another request from the High Command on Vorthak Prime. They want to study what happened here." The Gorthak Prime looked down at the commander with its natural eye. The relationship between them had become complicated. Vextha had been responsible for the creature's creation and control, but now he was trying to understand its transformation. "What do they want to know?" the creature asked. "They want to know if the process can be reversed, if you can be made into a weapon again." The massive creature was quiet for a long moment. Then it spoke in galactic standard so that everyone could understand. "Tell them that I remember everything now. I remember being captured and transformed. I remember the pain and the anger and the loss of everything I loved. I remember being forced to kill innocent people for 3,000 years. Its voice grew stronger. "I will never be a weapon again. I choose to be a protector instead." Vextha nodded slowly. "That is what I will tell them." Hyunwoo looked up at both of them with the serious expression he got when he was thinking about important things. "Commander," he said, "why do the Vorthak want to make more weapons like Gentle Strong One? You are already the strongest military force in the galaxy." "Because," Vextha said carefully, "we have always believed that strength comes from the ability to destroy enemies. It is how we have protected our territory and our people for thousands of years." "But that is not really strength, is it?" the boy asked. "Real strength is like what Gentle Strong One has now, the power to choose not to hurt people, even when you could." The words hit Vextha like a physical blow. A 7-year-old human child had just summarized in one sentence what the greatest Vorthak philosophers had spent centuries trying to understand. True strength was not about the capacity for destruction. It was about the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary and when it was not. This realization was spreading throughout the Vorthak Empire, carried by the reports of what had happened on Kepler 442b. Young Vorthak warriors were beginning to question the old ways. Some were even requesting transfers to peacekeeping and exploration duties instead of combat roles. The change was not just affecting the Vorthak. Throughout the galaxy, species that had focused on military might were beginning to reconsider their priorities. The humans had shown that there were other forms of power beyond weapons and armor. Dr. Haywan arrived at the colony gates with her daily research team. She was a child psychologist from Earth who had come to study how Hyunwoo had accomplished something that no adult had even attempted. "Good morning, everyone," she said cheerfully. "Ready for today's session?" These sessions had become part of the routine at the colony. Scientists from different worlds would study the interaction between Hyunwoo and Gentle Strong One, trying to understand the principles behind what they now called consciousness bridging. But the sessions were also helping other Gorthak units throughout the galaxy. Word had spread to planets where other bioweapons were stationed, and some of them were beginning to show signs of memory restoration. It seemed that Hyunwoo's success had created a ripple effect, awakening buried consciousness in creatures that had been considered nothing more than sophisticated machines. "Dr. Haywan," Hyunwoo said, "Gentle Strong One told me something interesting yesterday. He said he can sense other Gorthak units when they come close to the planet." "What kind of sensing?" she asked, pulling out her recording equipment. The massive creature spoke up. "There are others like me on the ships that visit this colony. I can feel their pain and confusion. They are waking up, but they do not understand what is happening to them." This was significant news. If the Gorthak Prime could communicate with other bioweapons, it might be possible to help them all recover their original consciousness. Mi Young, the diplomatic attaché from Earth, joined the group. She had been working with representatives from dozens of worlds to establish new protocols for dealing with awakened bioweapons. "The Galactic Council has approved our proposal," she announced. "They are creating a new category of citizenship for restored artificial consciousness. Beings like Gentle Strong One will have legal rights and protections." It was a revolutionary decision. For the first time in galactic history, the major civilizations were acknowledging that consciousness could exist in forms they had never considered. Artificial intelligences, bioweapons, and hybrid beings would no longer be treated as property. Sang Ho, a military strategist from Earth, was also part of the research team. His job was to help other species understand how to integrate peaceful solutions into their defense strategies. "The Centauri Federation has requested human advisors for their next diplomatic mission," he reported. "They want to learn how to use empathy and emotional intelligence in negotiations." Humans were suddenly in high demand throughout the galaxy. Their ability to recognize and connect with different forms of consciousness made them ideal mediators, counselors, and explorers. What had once seemed like a weakness was now recognized as humanity's greatest strength. As the morning session began, Hyunwoo sat cross-legged near Gentle Strong One's massive form. The creature had learned to position itself so that its natural eye was at the boy's level, making conversation easier. "How are you feeling today?" Hyunwoo asked. "Sad," the creature replied honestly. "I have been remembering more about my children. They would be very old now if they had lived. Probably grandparents themselves. Do you think they would be proud of you? For choosing to protect people instead of hurting them? I hope so. I think they would understand that I am finally being the kind of father they remembered." Dr. Haywan recorded every word of the conversation. These sessions were being studied by psychologists throughout the galaxy, and they were revealing new insights about the nature of memory, consciousness, and emotional healing. But perhaps the most important discovery was something much simpler. The conversation between a human child and an ancient bioweapon showed that the capacity for growth and change existed in all thinking beings, no matter how they had been created or what they had been forced to do in the past. Gentle Strong One had been designed to be the perfect destroyer. Instead, it had chosen to become the perfect protector. And it had made that choice because a 7-year-old boy had helped it remember what it meant to love. As the day progressed, more visitors arrived at the colony. Some were scientists and diplomats, but others were families with children who wanted to meet the creature that had become a symbol of redemption and hope. Gentle Strong One was patient with all of them, especially the children. It would kneel down to their level and listen carefully to their